So here we are with the ace game of the final series of the night. It's going down on Overgrowth. It is a Protoss v a Terran. And spawning down in the lower left hand position, representing Team PK, it is GunGFuBanDa. And his opponent, spawning up in the top right, the red Terran player representing Max Flow, it is souL. Very, very tense times. Not as tense as it could be. Just because this is the 5th, 6th decider game, so whoever wins this is only a reserve for WCS EU. They're not guaranteed a spot. It's only if someone who has 100% qualified has to pull out for whatever reason. Barracks first, out of souL, not going greedy, not with that CC first build we saw in the last game. And the main reason for that is it's a 2-player spawn map. Proxies are a possibility, as we already see GunGfu scouting for carefully. But more importantly, your opponent can scout it quicker and therefore react to it. So, souL going to be going Reapers, which are alright on this map. They're not amazing. There's a bit of space here they can bounce up and a bit of space over here. But are very agile and do get you some scouting nice and quick. Meanwhile, off the back of that, he can just tech up normally, take an expansion pretty good, and getting into a nice mid-game position. Meanwhile though, if we take a look at GunGfu, he's going for these 2 gases, relatively normal times, they're not super early. He has gone for a proxy in game number 1 with that proxy Stargate, so we can't rule that out. There are some nice locations you can proxy Stargate on this map, such as down here to get up into the main, or potentially even over here if you just want to get into the natural fast, both of which are frequently scouted. Cybercore on its way, 1 scout coming through now for GunGfu. Although he hasn't been able to make it up into the main base, he has seen important stuff like the gas and the fact that... Actually, no, he did make it all the way up. He checks to see if there's a second gas, knows he's safe. Meanwhile, souL, he's just keeping a peek, misses this probe. Now, this is the only probe out on the map, so he was going to try and go for a Nexus, not going to be able to grab that now. GunGfu still on 4 probes in gas. Meanwhile, over on souL's side, his Reaper doing the brave duty of making sure that there is nothing along the lines of a proxy or anything sneaky like that. Another probe is coming up, won't have been seen. And souL predominantly just checking for proxies right now. He doesn't want to do anything crazy, but he's going to see a probe attacking and wants to get back to save this SCV. Otherwise, there will be a small delay in making, obviously, his natural CC. Just managing to save it, and that's important. Meanwhile, GunGfu, he's got his natural base coming through. He's adding in a sentry, so that's where most of his gas is going. And he has now gone up to 6 probes in gas. Meanwhile, souL, he's added in an engineering bay. That gives him the option for the missile turrets, but also the option for a very early +1. And that's what we're going to be seeing here this game. And an early +1 is very nice defensively. Means that you do get a little bit of a delay in other tech, because obviously you've put the Vespian gas into that. But, to be honest, it isn't something that is hideously bad. So, GunGfu, just trying to zone out this Reaper, but the Reaper, up against a sentry and a mothership core, won't take enough damage, so can easily back out unless he did something incredibly bold. Tech lab being added on, Stim should get started, and over at GunGfu's side, we see that a robotics facility is on its way. A robo, mainly there, just to make sure that, hey, you're going to be checking up into Colossi, you need the observer out, and the downside to getting this nice and quick is just that you delay a couple of gateways, but it's quite normal. 1 gate into expand into a robo's fine. This double forge though is super greedy. Now I use this analogy a lot, but it's the best one I can think of. You know in RPG games when you're deciding whether your character should have like strength, intelligence, or like agility as a triangular slider? StarCraft, economy, tech, and standing army can be thought of the same way early game. You've got to move that slider around, and where GunGfu's put is all in tech, and I'm including upgrades in tech. He wants a powerful mid game, and it'll help him in that mid and late game. But right now, he's vulnerable. He's relying on good force fields and photon overcharge to buy him time. and he needs that time so badly. So Reaper coming into the main base is going to be able to rack up another worker kill. Stalker coming over to deal with him. Meanwhile, the push into the front. Going to actually commit to this to get a single probe. That's going to cause 2 Marines to die. 1 probe worth 2 Marines probably, because the Marines can be reduced very quickly, and while they cost slightly more, they lose income. That is a big loss though. The mothership core gets taken down. And that is awesome. Still waiting to see exactly what souL has planned, but he's rallied a significant number of units across the map. Remember, he does have +1. Stim though, fairly delayed and not yet active, nor does he have any medevacs. So we'll find it a little bit challenging to move in against these 2 cannons, especially when more gateway units start getting out. In a continued push into tech, we can see that we've got an early robotics bay, the double upgrades being chrono boosted consistently, and GunGFu is doing as much as possible to keep things going nice. Robotics bay about to be completed, while over at souL's side he's just switching over that starport to the reactor and ready to start obviously some nice production of medevacs, and this is where we can get a normal timing around the 10-minute mark, where a couple of medevacs and a decent chunk of infantry with stim, with +1 and combat shield are going to be looking to try and poke their way in and deal some damage. 3 cannons though put up a good defense, but what's lacking is a mothership core. It's only just now being remade at the natural base after it was initially lost to that first little prod. So without the mothership core, and even when it comes out without the energy on it, there's no Photon overcharge. A 3rd base coming through from GunGFu, and again we're seeing souL be pretty passive for the time being. But that likely to all change as the medevacs get across, because the medevacs are what are going to really help things. It allows you to be a lot more aggressive, and especially against gateway units it's going to be strong. And while there is a Colossus, there's 6 Marauders and no extended thermal lance, so the Marauders max the range of that Colossus, and therefore you can look to get some nice damage. A double drop actually coming through, and it's good that this is getting engaged on while it's dropping. The medevacs are going to struggle to back out of here. One gets taken down, trapping a lot of these units in there. The other medevac gets away with full health and full cargo, but still, nice pick off there by GunGFu. He saw that thanks to this lovely observer placed in a really nice position to scout anything that may be coming through. Still got the Phoenix hallucinated, coming around to scout to see whether a 3rd base has been taken, but unfortunately he isn't going to be able to see it because it's over to the right there. Still, these units looking fairly scary. The Nexus is done. A stim going to be used, and the 3rd Nexus is going to get sniped down. There's no way this army can get over there in time. GunGFuBanDa be like, oops, I forgot I had that. Would have been good to, you know, keep it alive. Hallucinated Phoenix getting a full scout out for GunGFu though. He's going to know that, okay, at least my opponent doesn't have a 3rd yet. Important times. Still waiting to see what GunGFu's got long-term planned. His long-term game plan has taken a bit of a bump, because losing that 3rd Nexus means he's lost a good chunk of his income. And with the build he's going for, which is completely reliant on late game with all of the upgrades, all of the tech early, he needs a lot of money, because he needs to produce a lot fast. Otherwise, he's just going to fall too far behind in overall army supply. And that 3rd base was a critical component of that being available. A couple of units moving up here. Zealot just surviving, 4 HP. Backs on out. So, scouting with his factory, because that's what all good factories do when a Terran player is going by. Lots of Vikings being produced, up to 6 already, up against these 3 Colossi. But note there's not more being produced. Instead, it's Immortals on their way out, and the Templar Archives coming through. Double upgrades, though, have given GunGFu a nice lead. He's a 2-2 up against 1-1. +2 infantry weapons nearly finished, and no sign of 3-3 as of yet for GunGFu. And that's because GunGFu is a little low on gas because of the lack of this 3rd, so instead investing in those high Templar and trying to probably get stormed down on some Archons nice and quick. So, doesn't have the gas in order to start 3-3. 3rd base retaken now by GunGfu, whereas souL has had his third up for a while and is also sitting on a 12 worker lead plus 3 mules. And that actually results in a fairly decent lead in overall income. Supplies favouring souL as well. That makes sense because obviously he has got the better income, but it also makes sense by the openings that we've seen. souL went just for a standard play, whereas GunGfu did invest so heavily in tech, he's got less of a standing army. Photon Overcharge being triggered. Bit of a bait out there. There's nothing even coming as of yet, and that's a little bit annoying because GunGfu really needs that Photon Overcharge. He needs everything that he can get in order to try and stop this force. But SCVs have been pulled. This is pretty much an all-in now from souL, a massive investment in it anyway. His Vikings doing a good job. Some Storms dealing a lot of damage, but a lot of those SCVs still surviving. The third Nexus is going to fall, and souL looking very comfy now. He's not won the game yet by any means, but he's done a fairly nice job of really containing his opponent. Without that third Nexus, there's a big problem for for GunGfu, because he's mining out at his main. He's only got a couple of 100 minerals left there. And so, to produce enough to be able to defend this force as it keeps getting larger is going to get very hard. Good number of SCVs were pulled, but remember, souL, he's got mules. So, economically, they're still staying pretty equal. Slight advantage for GunGfu. Nice storm there. And if GunGfu can deflect this push, because of the SCV pull, even though he's lost the third Nexus, it's not actually that awful. So, decent number of Vikings. Ghost count is only of 3, so the High Templar are still very scary. GunGfu going on the aggressive. GunGfu still down in SCVs. GunGfu still down in probes compared to the SCVs, just because of how much, obviously, he lost throughout, and also not having that third for long. The Viking count, very scary. 13 Vikings up against 2 Colossi. They're going to die very fast. Storms need to hit the money. Engagement count coming down. Those Storms in the back are very nice, getting a lot of damage through. The Colossi just melt, though. A couple of nice EMPs knock out the shield of a lot of this Protoss force, especially on those Immortals. The infantry now blasting through. GunGfu losing a considerable amount of his supply, and even the mule cooldown. This is one confident souL. He's trying to take out that Archon. Does fall. And now he's at about triple the army supply of the Protoss player. And he's still pushing forward. Doesn't really need to wait. Additional cannons being made. But this is a Terran player who is in an incredibly advantageous position. He's going to be trying to nail home this victory. Remember, it's game 3. If souL wins here, he gets the 6th spot of the wildcard qualifier, becomes a reserve for WCS EU Challenger, and has a chance to compete in Season 2. GunGfu now clinging on for his life. These cannons will not be complete in time. One just finishing up but doesn't get a shot off. And souL still applying so much pressure. High Templar, there's 2. In terms of energy, one definitely doesn't have enough for a storm. Not sure about the other, but that is a beautiful EMP. Archon getting morphed. No storm is now available. And souL is going to be pushing forward. More mana mules coming down. He's very sure that he's in a nice spot right now. Zealots engaging. And the infantry, while not hugely numerous, should be able to deal with this. The Archons are the big tanky unit, big damage dealer, but one of them already falls, another very low. However, souL just being forced to back away. GunGfu expanding up to the top left. It's a ninja base. It's going to buy him a bit more time. So let's take a look at the units and what we've actually got. 8 Zealots, 1 Archon, 2 Immortals, a Stalker, and 2 High Templar. Up against 23 Marines, 1 Ghost, 10 Marauders, and 15 Medevacs. That is a hell of a lot of Medevacs. But there's no need for Vikings. There's no Colossi. And if there's no Colossi, guess what? You can just pump everything into Medevacs and infantry. A Zealot win for some counter damage there. GunGfu actually killing off a lot more workers than his opponent, but remember, a lot of that isn't due to harassment, but was instead due to the SCV pull on the big push we saw in the mid-game. 21 minutes now through this game, and unfortunately for GunGfu, his top left-hand base has been discovered. That's going to get taken down, and with that dying, GunGFu loses another little chance of trying to claw back into this game. So, going to be attempting to secure up his 4th base and should be quite comfortably able to do so. He is just so incredibly high in terms of his army supply and overall supply that GunGFu is going to need some miracle storms to make this work. But if there's one thing that is a miracle, it's storms. They can do a lot. If they hit the money, it'll make a massive difference. Oh, beautiful play. Dropping the Ghost to get the EMP down. Didn't actually hit all of the Templar, though. A Colossus is now on the field, but it's only the one. That Storm missing the mark. Second Storm getting a bit more damage. And actually souL being very kind, walking his entire army into it. But EMP still going down. souL pushing forward. He is at 3 times the army supply of his opponent. It's not looking too good for GunGFu. It hasn't been for quite a while now. But souL doesn't want to overcommit and risk anything bad happening. Moving further forward. And now we get a big engagement coming down. That Colossus in the back dies. The infantry tearing through everything remaining. GunGFu losing his remaining army. Only 6 army supply. And that's a couple of zealots and 2 observers. Gratz and souL takes this series 2-1. And as a result, takes the 5th, 6th spot in this wildcard qualifier. And therefore becomes a reserve for WCS EU Challenger Season 2.